Today's story was written by Reddit user Sinpulton025. Captain's Log, Day 59. I always hated jobs like this. Being out here in the unexplored fringes always gave me the creeps. The lack of supply stations, the fact that we don't have a star map or charts, not to mention the possibilities of a pirate raid. Sure, there was a chance we could encounter a new species and integrate them into the conglomerate, but shit like that isn't what excites me. Leave that stuff to the Interspecies Bureau and the Galactic Exploratory Committee. What I want is a warm bed, some good food, and no meat eaters trying to chomp my face off. Still, the pay is good, and if anything, it's not boring. One thing I'll never understand is why the Octon Corporation wants a fighter from here. They could have just gone to Baok or Glacier. Hell, with the money they have, they could have even gone to Nom Klar and struck a deal with the Confederacy. Though I imagine that would certainly complicate matters for the other parties. But what do I know? I'm just a transport ship captain. Me and Conleia have been together for almost 30 years. And never once have we had to go out this far. She probably hates it too. I can hear it in the pipes and the wire work. The way the comms and interface keep glitching, this bugs her more than it does me. I know, big girl, I whispered as I patted my command chair. It's almost over. When we get back to Furia, I'll get you that new chart processor that's popping up everywhere. Hell, with the money I'll get, I might as well get you an upgrade from top to bottom. That wasn't an exaggeration. The money Octon was willing to pay was 20 times what I make in a year. If I'm being honest, I'd fly close to a black hole for something like that. But what made those greedy bastards pay so much was anyone's guess, though it was probably something with their long streak in the pits. They had success in the smaller fights, but as soon as they try to go to the big leagues on Morglac, they don't even make it past the first cycle. Gotta say, I feel sorry for them. But this new cargo we're carrying should, at least in their minds, turn the tide. Like I give a shit. Sir, Dr. Margoba is calling for you, one of my comms officers told me. What does she want? I say in a sigh. She says the cargo is acting differently. I raised my eyebrow. Differently? How? I'm not sure, sir, he said as I got up. Straightening my back and tensing my tail, I stretched and grunted. Guess I spent more time in that seat than I thought. Let's go, Intano, I told my security captain. Right away, sir, he replied. Intano was a Baok, which meant he was large. They were an ape-like race with thick fur, long brawn arms and a hunched back. Their necks were also somewhat short for their size, and their shoulders always touched their ears whenever they tried turning their heads. Intano was twice my height and width, with enough muscle to snap me in half like a twig. I was glad to have him and his retinue on my ship. Should the worst happen, I knew I could count on them. As we made our way down to the cargo hold, I noticed the door to the medical bay was open. When I glanced inside, I saw it was a mess. Surgical equipment, data slates, and various other objects were scattered everywhere. I rubbed my eyes in annoyance. Margoba got too excited again. Ever since we got a hold of that specimen, she hasn't gotten a lick of sleep, constantly going over her research notes and jumping around whenever she discovered something new. Eventually, Intano and I made it to the cargo hold. Well, to a specialised corner of the cargo hold, actually. Inside was a metal crate. A very big metal crate. On one side, it was a two-way mirror, and standing in front of it with a tablet was Margoba. Doctor, I called, and she didn't seem to notice me. Doctor. She snapped around and stared at me, mouth agape, her eyes red. Then she smiled. Oh, Captain. Good, very good. You're here. Come, you must see this. I got closer and immediately saw how bad she looked. Her fur was all messy, her clothes had stains, and her ears and tail kept twitching and wagging. When was the last time you slept? She took a long sip of caffeine before answering. I don't know, I can't remember. He's showing emotion. Hold on, slow down. Emotion? Grief, to be precise. she said as she scratched her head frantically. "This is the first time he's done that since we found him." "Show me." She pressed the button and the mirror turned on. Inside was a creature that made my skin crawl every time I saw it. It was big, very big, taller than Antano, and as broad. He had no fur except a clump of hair on his head and face, and a few patches on his body. And what a body it was! Lean and sturdy, each muscle was thick and strong. His pectoral area and his limbs were the most striking. He often didn't wear any clothing on his upper body, which allowed Margoba to observe how he moved. She also kept reminding me that it was male. After we found his planet, my officers discovered an underdeveloped communication and information sharing system. This proved that it was inhabited by sentient life, which was exactly what we were looking for. Margoba started researching immediately and became obsessed. A treasure trove of information, she said. Though I agree. It would usually take years for an exploratory fleet to uncover that kind of intel, but these people had everything on display. I didn't care much for it. Some things that interested me, like their sense of comedy and their obsession with building things, but I stayed away for the most part. "I brought his food today," Margoba continued. 10% nuts, 20% vegetables, and the rest was meat. Just like every day. It's still fascinating how his stomach works. Did you know that it has several different types of acid? Focus. What happened then? Well, he took the food, ate 12% of the meat, 2 nuts, and 1 glomo root, and then he just left it and sat down on the bed. He hunched his back and has been holding his head ever since. You said it was grief. Grief, sadness, depression, call it whatever you want. He has it. I believe he has what they call homesickness. So he misses his home. That's why you called me? Watch this, she said and pressed another button. A projection appeared on the other side of the mirror, images of nature and settlements. He looked over, his eyes in a scald. He stood up, his large frame encompassing half the mirror. I instinctively backed away, but Margoba stood where she was. The creature placed his hand on the mirror and looked at the images. He tilted his head and his lips moved, forming a half smile. He's smiling, Margoba said. They do this when they're happy. Do you understand how significant this is? We found a race of sapient life forms that can show a multitude of different emotions and possess a level of technology never before seen in a civilization outside of known space. This is an award-winning discovery. You say it like there aren't any downsides. Look at him. Does he look like he wants to coexist peacefully? You're afraid because of his size. Isn't that normal for us? We are here to do a job, Margoba, not to play explorer. A job? You want to give him to Octon. For what? Money? He has a life. He had a life, I yelled. It wasn't much of a life. Antano spoke for the first time. Those scars on his body are old, and those markings, probably some kind of crime syndicate. I noticed those before. His chest and abdomen were scarred, and his back looked like it was whipped. The black ink on his skin was alluring. Symbols I'd never seen before were across his back and shoulders. Being an ex-con, Antano knew a member of the underground, as he called it. That doesn't make it right, Basal, Margoba said. I didn't hear you complaining when we first found him. The doctor opened her mouth but didn't utter a word. In truth, she was far more ecstatic than anyone else when we came to that unknown world. If there's one thing I hate, it's hypocrites. I wanted to say something else, but the creature started banging on the glass. He moved his finger in a repeated motion. Down, left, right, up, left, over and over again. He's drawing something, Antano said. Margoba clicked her laptop and opened the small hatch at the bottom of the door. What are you doing? He'll know what this is, she told me and slid the tablet inside the cell. The large creature looked surprised for a moment before slowly picking it up. He played with it for a while, observing every angle of it. It looked so small in his hand, like a toy he could break at any moment. Then he started drawing. After he was done, he slid the tablet back and Antano picked it up. All 3 of us looked at it in confusion until Margoba scanned it. The tablet flashed several more detailed images of the same object. Some had symbols and letters, and some depicted a man being hung by his arms. "What the hell is this?" "A cross," the doctor said. "A symbol of their religion. He wants one." Great. So not only was it a brute, but it was also a zealot. My experience with the religious and spiritual kind hasn't been too good. For the most part, they wouldn't shut up about their gods and deities. And when they're not preaching, they're silently judging us for not having any. "Fine, but you're responsible for it." The doctor nodded, turned around and left. I stayed for a while and watched the creature. A part of me felt bad when it slumped back down on the bed. He did have a life. I don't know what kind of life, but it was his. And I took it away. That guilt is gonna stay with me. But there was nothing else to do. I headed back to the bridge with Intano behind me. "What do you think?" Intano didn't answer at first, but soon he spoke. "Well, he'll be a good fighter. Maybe Octon will get to the final cycle." "That's not what I meant." He let out a sigh before speaking again. "Criminals don't usually got much going for them. They either die in a gutter or spend the rest of their lives fitting in where they don't belong. I'm still in the latter. He doesn't look like any other criminal I've seen. He might just be a case of wrong place, wrong time. Be that as it may, Octon won't care. In fact, they'll love it. Being a killer is a plus in this business." "Very true. And how long before the rest of the conglomerate finds out that he's from unknown space?" "They'll keep it under wraps, at least until he's dead." "Also true. I imagine that they wouldn't want their competitors to have the same kind of fighter." I was gonna say something else, not sure what, but I was cut off by a sudden alarm. Red light flared across the halls and I ran to the bridge. When I got there, everyone was quick to react. Scanners were booted up, defense turrets were put online, and Intano's brutes were at the ready. "What's happening?" "Unidentified vessels approaching, sir," one of my officers yelled. 15 of them. 3 look like bulk carriers and the rest are small interceptors." "Get me the camera feed." Several screens flickered in front of me and I saw the hull markings. It was a twisted maw filled with teeth and a sharp tail below it. Skellions. "What are they doing here?" Intano asked. "We're nowhere near the Confederacy's border." "Scrappers. They take ships, chop them up and sell them for parts. They'll take us alive as soon as they see the Octon Core manifest." Like I was going to let that happen. "Aim the turrets." "Sir, we don't have the caliber to take down those carriers," another officer chimed in. "Forget them, Jara. It's the interceptors I'm worried about. If they get the engines, we're dead in space." They did as I told them, and the turrets opened fire. I wasn't an idiot to think I won't need a defense strategy out here. Conleia was equipped with 3 V7 LTSs on each side, more than enough to bring down the fast-moving fighters. They fired and 4 Skellions were already down. That's what you get, you scaly fucks. But they weren't dumb. They switched up their formation and started dodging. 3 more were shot down when they got too close, but 1 fired a rocket. It wasn't what I was expecting though. Instead of destroying the turret, the rocket stuck itself to the hull and let out an electric discharge. It shut down 2 of the turrets before the fighter was shot. The others kept manoeuvring and firing, landing their shots all over the ship. If only I went the extra mile and got a shield, though I imagine Conleia's engine wouldn't take it well. As soon as I thought that, the last 3 interceptors fired their rockets and disabled the last turret along with the thrusters. I cursed as I looked over my crew, their eyes filled with fear as the carriers drew closer. 1 hooked itself to the port side and 2 were on the starboard. We were being boarded. Shit.